So how are you?
How am I? I'm absolutely well, I'm fine, thank you very much. A bit I'd like to be younger, but I'm all right and I'm feeling pretty good about the future and the music that we've done. So uh and it's spring and summer's coming. So that's always a good state to be in, really. So I love this time at the beginning of spring uh, and summer, because there's
There's a
so long days and it's going to go on for a good while. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever this time comes around, I feel like there's a little bit more hope in the air for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
People seem to enjoy themselves just a little bit more.
Yeah. I certainly welcome it. Yeah. Because I live in a cold place.
But you jokingly say, I wish I was a bit younger, and I wasn't planning on asking this, but the output that you have and the joy and passion that you still have to make music I mean you've made a whole record by yourself. I mean that's where do you find the energy or find the yeah the conviction to do something like that?
Well, I honestly, if I stop, I just get terribly frustrated. I am a workaholic. Uh, I love doing this to the point where I really don't know how to do much else. If you wanted me to sort of like decorate your room, I'd be useless at it. But I can make a good record. I think I can make a good record. I realize that there's quite a lot of people who don't. But, I have certain sets of skills, like anybody else, and at a lot of really basic manly things, I'm completely useless. So,
Mm.
you know, uh, I get focused on what I do and try to do what I do the best, and that's it. Yeah, but you're right. It's been a long musical career, really. I mean, I made my first record that got released in 1987.
Mm.
Well, in fact, I'd made a single in 1979. So,
Okay,
that's that goes back quite a long way. And of course, there's been 12 albums by The Tangent, 5 albums by Parallel 90 Degrees. I've made about 6 or 7 solo records. So, there's a lot of music there.
sure.
Um, some of it's good, some of it's okay, and some of it's not good, in my opinion. And so it's just a long catalog. In the same way as one of my own heroes, Peter Hamill, has a
Mm.
huge variety of music that he's produced over the years. I find myself very much in that kind of area, just being a continual producer of music. That's Some people don't like that for some reason. There are people who go, "Oh, he's gone on for too long," or there are people who write reviews say, "Oh, another Tangent record. Are they ever going to stop?" I don't really see why I should stop. That's it. You if you want to keep on doing it, keep on doing it. That's it.
Oh no, definitely. And I'd find that evolution as you kind of talk through everything that you've done, that evolution musically, I find very interesting because I came across an earlier interview that you did where you said that I don't remember what the exact ages was, but at a young age, for a couple of years, all you would listen to was classical music. First of all,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that true? Because it's the internet, you never know. But how did you evolve kind of your interest into kind of the the type of music that you make now?
I think that, I mean, I started being interested in music very, very young. I lived in a
Mm,
house with my mum and dad. My mother played the piano. She taught me to play the piano.
okay.
I was playing the piano and I could play Mozart's simple pieces when I was 6 years old.
Oh wow.
I had plenty of classical music in the house to listen to. That's how I discovered music, through my mum and dad's record collection and the beautiful records they had: Rimsky-Korsakov, Beethoven, Brahms, Purcell, and all these guys. And I would listen to it and make stories up in my head about about the music that I was listening to. So that, you know, when I was listening to a Beethoven symphony, perhaps I wouldn't be hearing what he thought it was about. I'd be hearing some kind of sci-fi story and things like that. And consequently, because I was really into the story element that you could have from music, at the time, the pop music of the day in the 1960s was kind of passing me by a little bit. I've
Okay.
since obviously revisited it and found out the great stuff that came out in the 60s. But I was 12 years old when I first heard prog rock,
Mm.
which was close to the edge. It had just come out, and I heard it. And I was blown away by it, just amazed, because this was this modern pop music, except you could make up stories to it and you could hear, you could be part of that story and transport it to a different place by it. And it did to me what classical music had done till that point, you know. So I was absolutely in love with it straight away. And and of course, you know, I became that very rare thing in the 1970s. I was a 12-year-old Van de Graaff generator fan. I think I was the only one, to be fair. But like, you know, I had the album "The Least We Can Do Is Wave to Each Other" by the time I was 12, which is a bit
Mm.
sad, really. I should have been playing on the swings or fishing in a river or something like that. But no, I was listening to Van der Graaf bloody Generator.
But I do find that interesting, the way you talk about kind of the storytelling in the music, because I would say prog rock specifically has the ability to conjure up these worlds and to put some even cinematic elements to into it. And what did you like about kind of this type of music then? Was it the freedom that that there weren't any kind of preset rules to
I
which
think
you
I
had
think
to?
yeah, you're totally right there. That's it. I mean, music it tends to get forgotten, really, but music has existed for so long, so many
Sure.
centuries, and it precedes cinema. And for many, 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 many years and centuries before it, if you wanted a cinematic kind of experience before there was even cinema, music was where it was. It was either an opera, or it was or a long symphony, or a tone
Sure.
poem, or something like that. That's where you went to get something that took you away from reality and took you somewhere else from where you were standing. Now, of course, in those days, you'd have to go and see the orchestra play, um, or go and see a play on the stage, or an opera on the stage. You'd have to go and do that. But that must have been a very invigorating and exciting experience back then, because, you know, in today's world, music's just a commodity like salt. You
Sure.
know, we want that, we'll have this, we'll have that one. I'll download that, I'll play that, I'll put that on my playlist. You know, and there is a certain, well, there's not just a certain, there's a major way in which we've devalued the music since then. And of course, since the radio stations came and offered those formatted things where you get 3 minute song DJ, 3 minute song DJ, weather, 3 minute song, traffic news, 3 minute song DJ, you know. And to me, that's where kind of music started to forget that it's there to tell a story, and
Mm.
it is more than a 3 minute slot between the DJ and between the DJ and the traffic news, you know. So I've always been more interested in music as a vehicle for telling a story, making a point, making an observation, and to me, that's everything, really. And the critics can hate it as much as they like. You know, we this is what we do. I particularly write a lot of long songs. I think I hold the record for the number of long songs out there. I've checked it out. I've written more than Neil Morse has. So there you go.
No,
uh,
but I do find this very interesting because I've read other interviews where you said, well, the aim has never been to be famous or to get any kind of commercial recognition for the music necessarily. But then again, you also have to, in some ways, navigate the music industry as it's changed over the past 30, 40 years, I suppose.
Yes.
And even within musical kind of scenes itself, you kind of have to figure out how to make it work for you. How did you navigate what you wanted to do in music and balancing it with kind of having to make a living and kind of figuring out how to not sacrifice any of the creative elements?
I think I mean, there's a really, really obvious answer to that. The first and most obvious answer is a long time ago, I worked out how to live cheap.
Mm,
Um, I'm not a rich man. I don't have a car. I have a very old motorcycle, which is how I get everywhere. Um, my equipment is not the best in the world. I don't have loads of fantastic keyboards. I've got a load of very good cheap ones. And and I have an amazing computer that not only am I talking to you on this computer now, I make all the records on this record. I've learned everything there is to know about how to make music on this machine, and
mm,
how to get the very most out of equipment that people like Hans Zimmer, for example, might
sure.
not particularly want to use.
Sure.
I've got no desire to own a Ferrari or anything like that. It's a very kind of I live on something, out of music. If I add it all up, I probably end up making about as much as somebody who works in a McDonald's.
Mm,
Now, there are some people who go, well, that's terrible. And I say, well, yeah, it is terrible for the guy in McDonald's. For me, it's great because I'm having a good time. I get to be creative. Yeah, I'm never going to be a rich guy, but I get to do what I want, and I'm pretty well uncensored by anybody. And I've been very lucky because I've had this wonderful record company behind me
mm.
now for 22 years, and I've never been the guy who pays their bills or anything. But they've looked after me, and you know, one day will probably have to end. I don't know when that will be, and it might have to, but when it does, I won't be throwing a hissy fit. I'll be saying thank you. It's been an amazing ride. Um, you know, because I've been able to do exactly what I want to do. If I'm in a progressive rock band on a progressive rock label, and I say I want to do a disco song, and they go, "Yep, sure."
That's awesome.
They're great guys,
No, but
open.
also, sorry to interrupt, but also with what you mentioned, just being able to live your life the way you want. I mean, I think that especially in the world that we live in these days, that gets forgotten a little. There's always this emphasis on whatever success means and reaching the next goal and the next. But I think doing what you like to do is so much more important.
It,
Um,
it is, and of course, there are other things I do outside the tangent
sure.
musically. And not a lot of people. I've been working with a metal band from Canada this year, and last year, a band called the Anchorette, who are doing really well.
Mm,
And that's a completely different thing altogether. I also do an awful lot of work for Samantha Fox, the big pop singer, from the 1980s. I do bits of work for her to get her backing tracks together and things for live shows. But you know, my main focus, my main income comes from the tangent and selling records and just keeping going. And
mm.
that's what I intend to do, you know.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And this brings me kind of to what you've been up to the last couple of years then, because well, I can imagine you're always thinking, always working on creative ideas. So when you realized that the other guys in the band wouldn't have the time, or they had other commitments, so they wouldn't have the time to
Yeah.
work on some new material. When did the decision for you come in to not just release a solo album, but to do this undertaking by yourself, but also under the name of The Tangent?
Well, I think that, it was, everybody knows that the Tangent in its time has had many, many different people in it. And, there's, it was a long time before the same lineup made the next record as made the previous one. That didn't happen till 2020.
Okay.
But like we've but all the records are uniquely the Tangent, and so I had a word with the rest of the band, said, look, do you mind if I do this? And everybody said, no, go ahead, do it, because it was helpful. It helped finance me to be able to move forward to the Tangent's 14th record, which I've already started, and
Okay.
that in fact we've already got two 20-minute long songs for that one. So that's all happening. It'll take yonks for it to get finished, but it's there. I know what it's about, I know how it works and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that it just arrived at the point where normally I hand over the music to the other musicians in the group and they start to change it and put their own mark on it. And rather than just stop and say, okay, this is the album at that point, I did the same thing as I normally do, except I gave all the parts for me to look at again, and say, okay, Andy, now you're going to do the drums, but this time you're not going to do a demo. You do them right. You're going to do them like Steve would have done them. You're going to do the bass, and you're going to take as much care over it as Jonas would have done. You're going to think about guitar parts in the same way. So in many ways, despite the fact that they are not playing on the record, these guys are on the record. Jonas, Luke, Theo, and Jonas, and Steve, because they are so in my mind. And what would they have done? What would they have thought? They were there with me every day. So
Sure.
yeah, that's it. And it even reached the point. This has been mentioned in a fair few of the interviews where Andy, the bass player, and Andy, the drummer, kind of had an argument at one point. So like, no, the drummer say it needs to be this rhythm. The bass player's going, no, 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 it needs to be like this. And so we had to work out a compromise between the bass player, me, and the drummer, me, about how this was going to work. And that was really kind of good fun, to
Okay.
find out and understand how a bass player approaches my music and understand how a drummer approaches my music. And then, that's just going to be great for the next album when we are all together. I'm going to understand
Right.
more about how we make a record together. So, yeah.
I mean, you obviously talk about the joy that you have in making music, but is it when you're so in your own head, like you said, you have to play all these different parts, put on different hats, and do different things just to make a song? Is it difficult to kind of step out of yourself a little bit and look at the big picture when you're working on these
Yeah.
songs? Or
Well, I mean, like there are a number of ways in which this can happen. It's like some of this is a bit adult, really. You are you're making a piece of music, and yes, you're the only person in it, and you've got to find the big picture. Well, I'm one of the things I'm pretty good at within a project is to kind of be a method actor, so that I can actually take on and become a producer. I can become a keyboards player. I can become a composer. I can become a drummer, and start to think in that mode. And so, of course, that producer hat comes on, and I go, right, now I'm going to listen to it as a piece of music. And, is it working? Is it? And then, as well as that, one of the things I often do is try to become a listener rather than the person who did all this. And I sit down and I listen to it. Now, unfortunately, that's a very, very difficult thing to do most of the time. You find that you know what's coming next, and you know what's coming before, you know what's just been before it, and so there's no surprises. But there is a way, and you guys in Holland sell it really good stuff in the coffee shops. Yeah, if you, and this is the only time I really use it, but when I want to be the listener, if I have some of that Dutch coffee shop stuff, I can have some, and you become a lot more focused on what you're hearing right now, not what went before. You're not worrying about what's coming in the future. You're just listening to, does this sound good? Is this making me feel great? You know, and I find that does help, you know.
Okay.
I don't do it every time, but it can really sort of like open yourself up to how other people will hear it, other people who don't know how it all came together, um, who just want to hear it as a piece of music in the here and now. That technique does work. And of course, I took a Jonas Reingold once gave me this great piece of advice about how to make the records sound as good as you possibly can. This is because like what we do a lot of the time is we'll sort of like think, right, okay, we're going to do the final mix now. So we'd better listen to something that's really good, like Steely Dan, put Steely Dan on, and then play our music after that. Does that sound anything like as good as Steely Dan? The answer is usually no, because Steely Dan do sound very good, but it's a very good thing to think, are we getting anywhere even close to Steely Dan? You kind of go, yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, you play Steely Dan, you play ours, and it doesn't sound like ours is rubbish. So that's kind of good. It's a good benchmark. But the best thing that Jonas said was, don't compare it with a record, compare it to the record you want to make. So basically, what I do is I sit here with all the controls, the speakers are up, everything's ready, and I'm here sat at my mixing desk, which is, you can't see it, but that's the mixing desk. Okay. And you sit here and you listen to the music that you want to make in your head. You want, okay, this is how I want it to sound. And you listen to it and you hear it in your head. No music coming out of the speakers. It's all in your head. This is how I want it to be. And when you've heard it, how you want it to be, then you press the button and you go, shit, it sounds nothing like I wanted it to sound. So then you just work on it, and just until gradually, by doing that again and again and again, it finally starts to live up to your own expectations of what you wanted the music to be. And, you know, it's, to me, it's the one thing that will always make me unhappy with my own music is I get very, very worried, unsatisfied with the production, which to most people doesn't matter at all. But us musicians do get very caught up in, oh, the production, and really we ought to get a little bit less hung up on that, you know, because I know that Van der Graaf Generator used to hate the sound of their records, and I used to love the sound of their records. So, you know, it's all a matter of, they wanted to sound like Led Zeppelin.
Sure.
I mean, you know, that's it. Van der Graaf wanted to be like, sound like them or Hendrix, and they didn't. And I'm really glad they didn't. So that's it. So
Oh no, that's very interesting. I find that very interesting. So, well, I don't know if this is a good question then, but how close do you think you've gotten with To Follow Polaris to the image or the thing that you had in your mind?
quite close, actually. I think that on this one, because I played all the instruments, there's an element in which this time I knew how loud the guitar should be against the keyboard. So, you know, there's always a sort of thing. When you're recording an album, I'm not in any way disparaging them, but let's, for example, say we've made a record and Luke's played a beautiful guitar solo on it, which he always does, and I have it a bit quieter than he thought it should be. Yeah, he thinks that, okay, that guitar solo should be louder, and I think it's a great solo, but I think there's something else important there that Theo's doing that needs to happen. And of course, if I turn Luke's guitar solo up, then there's a chance that Theo might go, my saxophone is. These things do happen. We're
Sure.
very, very good at overcoming them in the tangent. We've worked together for long enough to be able to discuss things and reach compromises. So this never causes a row or anything. It's just these things. But here, being the person who played all the parts, I kind of found it easier to put that together because I knew where they should all be because, I'd played them all. So,
Sure.
even then, there's still some mistakes. Of course there are, there are things where I think, yeah, the drums are a little bit loud there. The bass could have been a bit turned up. But in the end, overall, I think it sounds okay. It sounds great. It's never going to sound like Trevor Horn or production on Yes in 90125 done in a studio that, look at the place. This is where I made all the records that in this room. It's only as big as it looks. And it's not acoustically treated and there's no booths or anything like that. And the equipment, you could sell all this equipment and you wouldn't be able to buy a motorcycle with it. So, it's it's done as well as I can have managed it, I think, So yeah, I'm generally happy with this album. Yeah.
But I think, sorry to interrupt again, but I think that's a
No.
very healthy idea, mindset as well, because I think, just from my experience in the music business now, there has been somewhat of an over reliance on kind of studio time or certain types of equipment where certain keyboards, whatever it may be, is used, and I think that kind of misses the point a little bit. It's not about the instruments that you use, it's kind of the sound that you get out of them and what you creatively do with it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, like you may be aware, you may not be aware because you might not have looked on the internet in the same places that I've done, but like there is there are people who are fans of keyboards and synthesizers more than they are fans of bands, and
Sure,
you'll
sure.
find pages and pages and YouTube channel after YouTube channel of people showing off this synthesizer, and it doesn't matter whether they can play it or not. They've got an original Moog System 3
Right.
or a Mini Moog Model D, and they're showing the also, and then comparing it to a modern one and everything. And you've got people saying, "Oh, the modern one sounds shit. The old one was way better." And there's got people saying, "Well, I actually think the new one's doing a very good job." And you look at it, and you've got an argument about whether a Moog Model D from 1973 is as good as a Behringer one from 2024, and that argument has got thousands of times more views than
Sure,
videos of
sure.
the people who are actually making records with the bloody things. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
that's definitely
frustrating.
true.
You kind of think, well, okay, you just become a guy who, if I, it's all a question of what you want to do. And I could actually make a lot more money, get a lot more views if I just sat here demonstrating synthesizers. I could get free synthesizers because I know how to use them. And,
Mm,
and to be fair, with 40 and more years experience of using synthesizers since the old days, I do know an awful lot about them.
sure.
But rather than do that, I want to make music with them, compose, write, use them for what they were made for, not for demonstrating to people and saying, "Hey, look at my really old vintage Korg monologue." It's just not what I want to do. And so I say, happy life. I do what I want to do. So yeah.
That's perfect. This kind of brings me into we don't have that much time left, but in terms of the themes then, because it's you talk about kind of the state of the world, or there is some mention of the state of the world and certain things that people are dealing with these days. But there does seem to be somewhat of a optimistic kind of lining
Yes.
around it. Why was that so important to you?
I think it's, because if you just if you just listen to music that's nothing about despair, you're not really even inviting a solution to come into your
Mm,
life. And basically, if you just say everything is crap, everything is rubbish, all governments are terrible, being alive on planet Earth is miserable. Well, you're not inviting a possibility that one day this could be better. And because it can be better. We all know that things can get better, and we all know that the optimism does not have to be about picking up a guitar and singing Lord of the Dance. I dance in the morning, and be all really happy, and yeah, isn't everything beautiful? There are real problems.
mm,
But you can look across those problems and you can actually see something in the distance. In the case of this album, that is obviously Polaris, the true thing, the one thing we can count on being true always for generations to come. There in the sky, people used to navigate ships by it before there was even
right.
GPS. It was a global positioning system. Well, it was a half the world's half global positioning system. It doesn't work in Australia because you can't see it. But we had it and we've used it all this time, and you can't even deny it. Even if you're a flat earth conspiracy theory, it's there in the north. You can't deny it. It's just
Yeah,
there. And I just used that as a metaphor, as a sort of focal point for truth. If you want to try it, if you just think we live in a world of nothing but lies, and in many ways we do, there are still things that are true, and you can still see them, and you can still believe, and you can still use them as an inspiration to move forward and find something better in life, better than lying politicians, better than bogus systems of government that have elections that mean nothing every
sure.
5 years and tell you this is democracy, this is government by the. Is it bollocks? Government by the people? It's government by you or him. That's it. And it's usually him, isn't it? So my generation of people, I'm in my 60s, and there are a lot of people who have got a bit gripey about things. They don't like to see, they don't like to see trans people. They don't like to see LGBTQ
Sure.
people there in the world, and they don't like the change. They don't like to see that. They don't like to see people coming from different countries to their country. I can understand it. I understand it, but I don't, because we caused so many of the problems in the first place. And, we should never have had this sort of like mad prejudice against gay people for years and years and years and years.
Sure.
It was us that was wrong to start with. What we're seeing is somebody's put something right. A long held wrong has been put right. And there are some people who don't like that happening. I see the point, but I think you've got to be a bit more open-minded about the future, and the thing that life will never be the same at the end of your life as it was at the beginning. You've learned a lot, and we're all learning as we go on. So
That's, yeah, definitely. Hopefully, that's what happens, right? That you evolve and grow as a human being, and that we can grow as a society. Well, unfortunately, history has shown that progress is very slow. So that
yeah, it's slow, but I don't know how old you are, but I want
37,
to, hey,
37.
37. So you're what I'd call a young fella. You're younger than I was when I started the tangent. I began the tangent when I was in my early 40s. So, and all that's happened since then. I mean, I look back at my life. When I started my life, uh, nobody had ever been to space. That happened when I was 2. Yeah, a guy went to space. By the time I was 10, somebody had gone to the moon. Um, and computers arrived. Then the internet arrived. Concorde arrived. People could travel in faster than the speed of sound.
Sure.
Synthesizers were invented. Color TV happened, and just think, whoa, all that happened
It's
in one bloke's
incredible.
lifetime.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are things that are terribly slow, and isn't it amazing that you can do all those things, make such a development, come from literally nobody's left the planet and nobody's ever spoken to anybody via email. And then suddenly all this happens and music completely changes and the way we go about our daily lives completely changes, but we're still prejudiced against people who are gay. Whoa!
It's insane. That to me is insane. But
Oh no, we can't have that. So it's that's just me going on. I'm an old lefty.
no, I am that way. I do. Well, I kind of have to end the interview because there's only 1 minute left on the stream.
Oh, what a
Um,
shame. But anyway, it's been lovely to talk to you, my friend.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been incredible, and thank you so much for taking out the time to talk with me. And I'm an old soul as well. I get where you're coming from. That's kind of has been my mentality for a long time.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm still happy. You've got at least another 25 years of being really cruel
Hopefully.
and happy. Yeah, and it's all good. So yeah,
All
nothing
right,
wrong with
man.
60. See you
All right,
later.
Andy. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything, the
And thank you
release
for
and
taking
everything.
the time. You guys bring us to the people. That's great. Thank you very much
Awesome.
indeed.